Hey loves, and welcome back to Lynn's Place, where we talk about faith, identity, womanhood, and the quiet work of becoming. There was a time in my life where I thought showing up for everyone else was just who I was. Being available, being dependable, being the one people could lean on. And I wore that like a badge of honor. But what I'm becoming aware of now is just because you can carry something doesn't mean you're meant to. And healing will start to show you the difference. Lately, I've been noticing something about myself. I don't show up the same way I used to. I'm not as quick to say yes. I'm not stretching myself thin just to be there. And I'm not abandoning myself to keep things comfortable for other people. And at first, I felt wrong. I questioned myself like, am I becoming distant? Am I pulling away too much? But the truth is, I'm not becoming distant. I'm becoming more aware. Aware of my limits, aware of my capacity, aware of what it costs me to keep showing up the old way. And here's the hard truth that came with that. The version of me that always said yes, the version of me that was overextended, the version of me that carried everything quietly. That version of me was easier for people to understand. So now as I grow, as I change, as I start showing up differently, not everyone is going to understand that. And that's been something I've had to sit with. Another thing that I've had to sit with that people don't talk about during this journey is that letting go of who I used to be isn't always empowering at first. It's grieving. Because I wasn't just letting go of habits. I was letting go of a version of me that got me here. A version of me that knew how to survive. A version of me that kept going when things were hard. A version of me that carried more than she should have, but she did it anyway. And if I'm being honest, there were moments where I felt guilty. Like, was she not enough? Was everything she did not enough to keep me here? And that's a hard place to sit in. Because how do you honor who you were while also admitting you can't stay her? There's grief in that. A quiet kind of sadness that comes with growth because you realize you don't get to become who you're called to be without releasing who you had to be to survive. So in this new season, it's causing me to have an identity shift. It's causing me to look at myself differently because for a long time, I didn't just show up a certain way. I identified with that person. The strong one, the dependable one, the one who always made it work. The one who carried so much without complaining. That wasn't just what I did. That became who I believed I was. So now I'm learning as I'm setting boundaries, as I'm choosing myself in ways I didn't before, it's not just my behavior that's changing. It's a shift. It's deeper than I expected because when you start letting go of that version that everyone is used to, you have to face who you are without it. And that can feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, uncharted territory, as you can say. It feels like you're losing a part of yourself. But what I'm learning is I'm not losing myself. I'm meeting a version of myself that doesn't have to earn love by overextending. A version of me that doesn't have to prove her worth by always being available. A version of me that can still be loving, still be present, still be supportive without abandoning myself in the process. And I really want to say that I deeply appreciate the people who understand where I am right now in life. The ones who can see the shift and don't take it personally. The ones who can recognize that this is necessary for the season I'm in. Because in this time that I'm taking, I'm using it to create. It's not distance. I'm just becoming more intentional. I'm reclaiming my life and I'm reclaiming my voice. And that matters. I'm learning how to show it with intention now. I'm not losing myself. I'm becoming more aligned with who I actually am. I'm taking time to pause before I say yes. I'm checking with myself before I commit to something. Like, I ask myself, do I have the capacity for this? Am I showing up out of love or obligation? Am I giving from overflow or from exhaustion? Because for so long I showed up automatically. No boundaries, no pause, no consideration for what it was costing me. But intentionally living, it requires awareness. It requires honesty, and it requires you to choose yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. But it also comes from a place of alignment. It's choosing peace over performance, truth over approval, and obedience over comfort. I'm choosing to rest without guilt. I'm no longer over explaining myself so that I don't have to feel guilty, I guess. And it looks like real things in my life. Like I'm honoring what I feel instead of pushing past it. And it feels peaceful. It feels honest. It feels like I'm finally standing in something that's mine. It matters. And I don't believe God is asking me to stay who I was just to keep people comfortable. He's calling me into something deeper, something aligned. And I'm not just finding my voice anymore. I'm using it. I'm trusting it. I'm honoring it. There's been something else that God has been showing me this season. Is that my energy, my time, my voice, they're not just mine to give away freely. There's things I've been entrusted with. And I can't be a good steward of what God placed inside of me if I'm constantly pouring it out without wisdom. If I'm always drained, always overextended, always empty, then I don't even have the capacity to show up for what He's actually called me to do. So now I'm learning that protecting my energy isn't selfish, it's stewardship. And the guilt, yet again, the guilt that comes with it. There's still moments where I feel guilty for not being there. I'm asking myself, should I be doing more? Should I be there more? I don't want people to feel like I changed. And it's not just a passing thought. It's something that you sit with every day, every time you turn down an invitation to go somewhere, every time you turn down an invitation or you don't do something that you would normally jump and do. The moment that I don't answer the call right away, or the moment when I say no instead of yes. The moment that I choose rest versus exhaustion. Then in my head, I'm asking, are they okay? Did I let them down? Are they going to think that I don't care anymore? Because when you've been the one people could always count on, changing that role doesn't just affect them. It affects how you see yourself. There's a part of you that still wants to be who you used to be. Not because it was healthier, but because it was familiar. Because it made you feel needed. It made you feel valuable. It made you feel like you were doing the quote unquote right thing. So now choosing myself can feel like I'm doing something wrong. And that tension, it's kind of healing. You're doing what's right for you. It doesn't always have to feel right at first. And I've had to remind myself on several occasions, guilt doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means you're doing something different. Something unfamiliar. Something that your old self wouldn't have done. That's growth. I've had to remind myself, I am not responsible for bringing everything to everyone. I am not responsible for keeping relationships the same if I'm not the same anymore. I am not responsible for how people interpret my boundaries, it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I care about myself a little more now too. Some relationships will grow with you. Some will need time. And some may not come with you into this next version of your life. And that is not failure, that's growth. And if I'm being real, that truth can come with grief too. It can come with second guessing. It can come with moments where you wonder, yet again, is this the right thing? But growth will always require you to choose who you're becoming, even when it changes what you're used to. It means that maybe it's not about becoming someone new. Maybe it's about being honest about who you're not anymore. Growth has a way of revealing what no longer fits, even when it's familiar, even when it once felt like home. Sometimes God will outgrow you out of spaces, versions, and mindsets you thought you needed. So here is this week's quiet question for you guys. Can I honor who I was without staying her? And this is what I would say. Not just to you, but to myself too. I know this part feels confusing. Outgrowing who you used to be without fully recognizing who you're becoming yet. It can feel like you're in between versions of yourself. Like you don't quite fit where you used to be, but you're still finding your footing in where you're going. And that can feel lonely. But I need you to understand something. You're not losing yourself. You are shredding what you no longer need to carry. And I know that's a part of you that you want to hold on to just for a little bit longer. Because she was familiar. Because she helped you survive. Because she got you here. And you're allowed to honor her for that. But you're not meant to stay her. You're allowed to grow beyond survival. You're allowed to choose peace. You're allowed to become someone who no longer has to shrink to be loved or carry what was never yours. And I know it doesn't always feel easy. Some days it will be uncomfortable. Some days it will feel unfamiliar. Some days it might even feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're not. You're becoming. And becoming requires release. It requires trust. It requires you to let go, even when it's hard. So give yourself grace in this space. You don't have to rush the process. You don't have to explain your growth to everyone. You don't have to go back just because it's familiar. You're allowed to move forward, even if your voice shakes. You're allowed to honor who you were without staying her. And where you're going, it's going to require all of you. Not the version that shrinks. Not the version that performs. But the version that is whole. The version that is aligned. And the version that trusts God enough to keep becoming. And you're already on your way. I didn't lose myself. I outgrew who I needed to be to survive. And now I'm becoming who I was always meant to be. If this episode spoke to you, take a moment to sit with it. And I'll meet you in the next one. And remember, you're still becoming.